Welcome to my Sunflower Burst transparent watercolor tutorial. This is a narrated step-by-step tutorial where I'll walk you through the development of this painting. It's the companion video to my Sunflower Burst transparent watercolor demonstration, which is set to music at 3x speed so you can watch the uninterrupted evolution of the painting. On the right window of the split screen is my reference photo. It's a picture I took at a local farm stand. It was a bag of sunflowers. This is my palette, and I've highlighted the colors that I used for this painting, Sunflower Burst. Royal Blue, Mauve, Quinacridone Coral, Quinacridone Violet, Alizarin Crimson, Pyrola Red, Gamboge, Quinacridone Gold, and Sap Green. I use this fine mist spray bottle to soften edges and diffuse color. These are the brushes I've used for this painting. Starting from the bottom, Silver Black Velvet, I used a jumbo round small wash brush and a 1.5 inch flat wash brush. Both of these have a nice soft bristle, and they're very good for applying a wash. The brush in the middle is an Escoda Reserva. I have a number of these brushes, and they're a good all-purpose general use brush. The brush at the top is a Black Gold Quill Series. I use a 000. It's not a small brush, but it comes to a very fine point, and it's excellent for detail work. I've sketched my composition using my reference photo, and I've made the decision that I want to preserve some of the highlights before I begin painting. So I've got a bottle that's full of masking fluid, and I'm going to go around the entire composition preserving some of the areas, some of the highlights that I want to keep the white of the paper. At this point, I'm just about done putting masking fluid on the areas that I want to protect. My masking fluid has dried, and now I'm ready to begin my painting process. I'm going to begin by laying down a wash in the center areas of the sunflowers, and I'm using a mixture of Quinacridone Gold and Quinacridone Coral, and then I'll come in with Quinacridone Violet, which I'm putting in right now, and it's an interesting combination. And I'm taking more of a charged approach where I'm letting the colors mingle on the paper. So I'm going to load this area up with a wet wash, letting the colors mingle. And then I want to create some texture. So I'm going to come in and sprinkle a little bit of salt. I don't use it a lot, but every now and then in an area where I want to use some texture, I'll come in and I'll sprinkle a little bit of salt onto the wet wash, and when it's dry, it gives an interesting textural quality. I'm going to repeat this process with the center of the other sunflower. And one of the things you can also see happening is where I've put some masking fluid, you can see it's resisting the watercolor. So the tops of the seeds in the center of these flowers are highlighted, and that I'll reach a point when I'm partway through this painting process, I'll dry the paper and remove the masking fluid, and then continue to paint over top of that. Now I'm going to flip my board the other way, turn it 180 degrees, because I want to put a background wash, and I want to lead that wash away from the flowers. So I'm letting gravity do the work for me. I've turned the board around. I have it at an incline. I always paint at about a 15-20% 20 degree incline. You can see I'm applying this dark purplish wash which is a combination of mauve and quinacridone violet. So I'm painting along the edge of the flowers with this darker tone, and then I'm going to come in with a combination of quinacridone coral and quinacridone gold, and it'll be an interesting variation to the wash. So I'm working my way around these flowers, and I'm still creating a mixture of the dark purple tones and then the coral and quinacridone gold mixture. It's much more interesting than just a flat wash. So I turn my board back around and I continue my painting process. There's a little bit more of this background tone that I want to pick up in the lower right hand corner of the composition. So I'm coming in with the same wash, and I'm going to cut the areas along the outside edge of the sunflowers. I'm ready to start applying a yellow tone to the flowers, and to do that, rather than paint each petal of the flower individually, I'm just taking a large 1.5 inch flat wash brush loaded with color, and I'm going in and I'm just painting the entire surface of the flower, and I'm also covering the area which is the green part of the flower. The yellow underpainting will work well with the green that's going to go on top of the petal shapes. Taking this approach with this large wash, I can create gradation and variation over the whole area, and it occurs more naturally and gives a different result than I would if I was doing each petal of each flower individually. So I'm going to come in with some little bit darker or richer gold color to create some variation in this yellow tone, which is going to become an underpainting for the flowers. So I'm starting to apply a little bit richer color here. This is quinacridone gold. It's one of my favorite colors. I'm still working with this richer gold tone, and as I apply this, I'm trying to parallel the direction of some of these petals. That just helps enhance the flow of the painting and the direction of the painting. I've dried my paper, and I'm going to begin to put a sap green glaze over the top of the green leafy areas of the flower. At this point, I've covered quite a bit of the green leaf shapes, and you can see how that green glaze works in concert with the yellow underpainting. Now I'm going to start to come in with a darker burnt sienna tone. This is still a mixture of quinacridone coral and quinacridone gold, and I'm going to start detailing some of the structure of the flower, starting to build darker values. Continue to work around the composition with this gold tone, and at this point the darker values are starting to bring out the structure and the composition. The flowers are beginning to look more like a flower, and the background is beginning to look more like a background. Here I've begun to glaze another layer of a green tone which starts to give a little bit more dimension to the green leafy shapes. Now I'm starting to bring in my the darkest green value yet, and it's going to start to really give some more dimension to the overall composition. As I continue to work with this darker green tone, I'm using my reference material less and less and starting to let design principles guide my actions. I'm making my decisions based on where I want more detail, or where I want a darker value, where I want to create overlap or make something stand out or go back. So not looking at my photo and trying to represent what I'm seeing there, but I'm trying to make decisions that I feel will help the overall composition and design of my painting. I'm coming in with a dark green tone here towards the back where there's an element of the green leaf shapes that sticks out amongst all these yellow petals. And again, to keep it interesting and not just a flat wash, I'm going to come in and I'm going to charge it with a little bit of quinacridone coral and quinacridone gold mixture. I'm coming in with a gold wash here to set some of these petals a little bit more in the background. I'm coming in here with a darker mixture of quinacridone violet and quinacridone gold, and I'm applying a darker value over the center areas of the flowers. I want those to stand out a little bit more, and I want to clean up the edges a little bit of the flowers. I'm doing the same thing to the center of the other flower here, applying this darker tone, and I still have those highlight areas preserved with the masking fluid. Now I'm going to come in with my deepest gold wash yet and set some of these petals even further back. You can see how I'm using a fairly big brush. I don't have a little double aught zero brush that I'm trying to noodle away fine detail. I'm just putting a nice glaze over the top of some of these petals so they go farther in the background. I'm going to use that same dark gold tone on the inside of this flower to give a little bit more dimension to the flower structure itself. And I'm using that fine mist spray bottle to soften the edges. Here I'm working with a little bit darker green valued tone, and I'm working underneath some of these green leafy shapes so I can bring them forward and set the underneath of the flower more back in shadow. So I dried my painting. Now I'm going to take a rubber cement pickup eraser and I'm going to begin to remove the masking fluid. So this is going to reveal the highlighted areas that I've preserved at the beginning of the painting process. So here I'm getting the last of the masking fluid removed, and you can see where I've preserved the highlights around the edges of several of the flowers. I'm working with a dark green. This is probably the darkest green value that I've used so far, and I'm trying to get a little bit more detailed, bring out some of the highlights that I've revealed by removing the masking fluid, and make a stronger value contrast in some of those areas. I'm going to take some of this darker gold tone to create a little bit of a shadowed underside to the petals of the flowers that are in the foreground. Here I'm taking a yellow glaze and toning down some of the highlights that I had preserved with a masking fluid. Even though I preserved the white area of the paper, I don't necessarily want to leave it white once I've revealed it. Some of the areas I'm going to tone down with yellow or green mixtures. I began to work here with a very dark green value tone, and I'm working my way around in negative space, starting to bring out some shapes and send other shapes towards the back. And this process can take a while to work your way around and carve some of these shapes out of your composition. And I'm using my black gold quill series brush. It's a triple O size, but it's not as small as most triple O's, which can be very, very tiny. It's actually a fairly thick bristled brush, but it comes to an extremely fine point, and it's really good for doing this kind of detail work. I'm going to work with this gold tone, trying to give better definition to some of these leafy shapes or petal shapes of the flowers. Using this Sienna tone, it's a mixture of quinacridone gold and quinacridone coral, to just provide some dark accents around some of these petal shapes, give them a little bit more dimension. I'm going to work a little bit of color in on top of these highlights that I preserved in the center of the sunflowers. So I have that nice white of the paper that was preserved, but I can come in with a colorful glaze, and I'm actually using just a little bit of quinacridone coral, a little bit of mauve, and just touch in those highlighted areas of the center of flowers to give a little bit of interest and bring a little bit more color too. As I come closer to finishing this painting, I'm coming in with just some dark accents. I'm working my way around the composition, trying to provide small areas of contrast. It brings a little bit more dimension to the painting. It brings shapes forward, sends some others back, creates overlap, and just generally helps create interest. And here I'm doing the same thing with a dark green tone, just trying to work my way around the composition. It also helps lead the eye around the composition and move you through the painting. One point I want to make is, while I have a reference photo that I used when I began this painting, I haven't looked at it for some time. I'm trying to follow good design principles, and I'm more focused on creating shapes that are interesting rather than trying to recreate every element of the photograph that I was using for reference. So there you have it. There's my painting, Sunflower Burst. Thanks for watching.